Sector Null had a reputation older than most civilizations. Not dangerous, not hostile, just wrong. Charts marked it as empty space, a region where stars should have formed but didn't. No radiation signatures, no cosmic debris, no gravitational anomalies. Nothing. And that was the problem. Because in a universe where everything leaves a trace, Sector Null left none. For centuries it was avoided, not by law but by instinct. Explorers who drifted too close reported the same thing. Instruments glitching, time desynchronizing, a feeling that something unseen was watching from behind reality itself. The last official expedition, sent by a coalition of 5 major species, ended in silence. Their final transmission, recovered in fragments, contained only a distorted visual and a single phrase repeated over and over. It saw us, it saw us, it saw. Then nothing. No wreckage was ever found. So the galaxy did what it always did with the unknown. It labeled it, filed it, ignored it, until the day the void blinked. It started at the edge of perception, a fluctuation so small that most systems dismissed it as noise. But not all. Deep space observatories, machines designed to watch dying stars and map cosmic expansion, caught something impossible. A ripple, not moving through space, distorting it. At first, scientists argued it was lensing, some massive object bending light, but the equations didn't work. There was no mass, no source. Just a region where reality behaved incorrectly. Then the ripple pulsed. Once, twice, and grew. Across the galaxy, alerts began stacking. Long-range sensors locked onto Sector Null, their feeds filling with contradictory data. Distance readings fluctuated wildly. Coordinates shifted. Timestamps desinced. And at the center of it all, something began to take shape. The Croth didn't hesitate. They never did. A species built on conquest doesn't fear the unknown, it crushes it. Within hours, a full warfleet mobilized. Hundreds of ships tore through hyperspace, emerging at the outer boundary of Sector Null in perfect formation. At their head, General Rax, veteran of 17 campaigns, breaker of planetary defenses, a being who had never once retreated. He studied the anomaly in silence. It wasn't large. Not yet. But it was wrong. Even from this distance, his flagship system struggled to maintain lock. Visual feeds flickered between empty space and something darker, like a shadow trying to exist. "Report," he growled. "Gravitational readings are unstable," an officer replied. "No central mass detected. Energy signatures are inconsistent." Inconsistent how? The officer hesitated, as if they're responding. Rax's eyes narrowed. To what? No answer came. Because at that exact moment, the anomaly pulsed again. Stronger, and something inside it moved. "Advance formation," Rax ordered. There was no debate, no delay. The Croth fleet surged forward, engines blazing, weapons charging as they crossed the threshold into Sector Null. At first, nothing happened. Systems stabilized. Sensors normalized. The distortion faded behind them like a curtain closing. Some of the crew even relaxed. "Looks like a false." 9 seconds. That's how long normal lasted. On the 10th, everything died. Not failed. Not damaged. Stopped. Engines cut mid-burn. Weapons powered down. Navigation froze. Even internal systems, life support, communications, neural links flickered into silence. Panic spread instantly. "What's happening? I've lost control. Manual override isn't responding." Rax slammed his fist against the command console. "Reboot all systems, now." No response. Because something had changed. Not the ships. The space around them. Then it appeared. Not from ahead. Not from behind. From everywhere at once. A shape. if it could even be called that. Vast, dark, layered with impossible geometry that refused to stay consistent. Angles bent inward, surfaces folded into themselves. It wasn't just large. It was wrong in scale, as if size no longer had meaning. The fleet hung motionless before it. Weapons dead. Engines silent. Crew frozen. Rax stared at the thing, his battle-hardened mind struggling to process what he was seeing. This wasn't an enemy. This wasn't a structure. This wasn't anything that belonged in the known universe. And yet, there was intention in its design. Purpose. Awareness. Then a realization hit him, cold and absolute. It wasn't that they had approached it. It was that it had allowed them to see it. Across the fleet, one final transmission activated. Not sent by any Croth system. Broadcast automatically. A single frame. A single moment captured. The shape. The impossible construct. And at its center, a faint, unmistakable pattern. Not alien. Not random. But structured. Engineered. Recognizable. Then the transmission cut. Every Croth ship vanished. No explosion. No debris. No trace they had ever existed. Across the galaxy, observers replayed that final image in silence. Over and over again. Trying to understand what they were looking at. Trying to deny what their instincts were already screaming. Because buried in that impossible design, there was something disturbingly familiar. Something ancient. Something forgotten. And as the anomaly pulsed once more, growing wider, brighter, awake, a classified archive deep within the Galactic Council, unlocked automatically for the first time in centuries. One file, one word, a designation no one had spoken in generations. Human, and somewhere inside the void, something began to power on. The image spread faster than panic. Within minutes of the Croth fleet's disappearance, every major observatory, military command, and intelligence network across the galaxy had it. A single frozen frame. A shape that made no sense. And yet it felt deliberate. Engineered. Designed. That was what terrified them most. Emergency sessions ignited across the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species appeared in holographic form, voices overlapping in chaos. Explain this. That is not natural. Where is the Croth fleet? No debris, no energy spike, a Virelian analyst said, her voice tight. They didn't explode, they didn't jump, they simply ceased. That's impossible. So was Sector Null. Silence followed that, because everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The rules had changed. Deep within the Council's most restricted databanks, ancient protocols activated. Locked archives, some untouched for centuries, began decrypting on their own. Layer by layer. Code by code. As if something had triggered them remotely. Or expected this moment. The first word that surfaced meant nothing to most. But everything to a few. Human. Clarify, one counselor demanded. The system hesitated. Then began compiling fragmented records, old surveillance logs, incomplete studies, half-corrupted historical data. Images flickered into existence. A blue planet. Liquid oceans. Cloud systems. And life. Not advanced. Not unified. Primitive. Divided. Humans. At first, the chamber reacted with confusion. This species, they're insignificant. Pre-space flight, according to this. Emotionally unstable, high conflict rates. Extinct, aren't they? That assumption lingered. Until the deeper files opened. The tone changed. Suddenly, the data wasn't observational. It was cautious. Concerned. They adapt rapidly. Technological progression exceeds predictive models. High resilience under environmental stress. Unusual behavioral trait, cooperation under existential threat. A Croth observer leaned forward, frowning. That's not unique. The analyst shook her head. It is when combined with this. A new file unlocked. Conflict record, humans. The chamber dimmed as footage began playing. Wars. Thousands of them. From primitive weapons to advanced machinery. Each more destructive than the last. Each followed by rebuilding. Improvement. Innovation. They fight constantly, someone muttered. No, the analyst corrected quietly. They learn constantly. More files surfaced. Human technology evolving at an exponential rate. Not linear. Not controlled. Explosive. Messy. Unpredictable. They reverse engineer everything, another analyst added, even things they don't fully understand. That's reckless. That's why it works. A silence crept in again. Different this time. Heavier. Because the pattern was becoming clear. Then came the final set of records. And everything changed. No extinction markers detected, the system reported. No planetary destruction. No mass die-off. Then where did they go? A counselor asked. The system paused. Processing. Reconstructing. Then, unknown. The chamber erupted again. Unknown is not an answer. They can't just disappear. Every species leaves something behind. But not this one. Wait, a Virelian researcher whispered. Her eyes were locked on the Croth image. Zooming in. Enhancing. Breaking down the impossible geometry piece by piece. There, she said. Stop. The image froze. She highlighted a section near the center of the structure. At first, it looked like nothing. Just another distorted surface. But then she adjusted the filters. And the chamber went quiet. Lines appeared. Symmetry. Repeating patterns. Not random. Not alien. Familiar. No, someone breathed. It wasn't just engineered. It followed principles. Mathematics that multiple species recognized. Design logic that mirrored early-stage human constructs. Crude by comparison, but unmistakable. That's not coincidence, the analyst said. That's lineage. The realization hit all at once. If this is human, then it didn't disappear. It evolved before anyone could respond. A new alert slammed into the system. Unidentified vessel approaching anomaly. All eyes snapped to the live feed. A single ship. Small. Cloaked. Virelian design. Who authorized that? Someone demanded. No one answered. Because they all knew the truth. Someone always tested the unknown. Inside the scout ship, analyst Saren gripped her controls tightly. Her orders had been simple. Observe. Record. Leave. She approached slowly, her cloaking systems bending light, masking her presence. The anomaly loomed ahead, larger now, pulsing faintly. Alive. Distance holding, she whispered. Sensors. They died instantly. All of them. Her breath caught. No, no, no. She ran diagnostics. Nothing responded. Except one system. Visual. And what she saw made her forget to breathe. The anomaly wasn't empty. It wasn't a distortion. It was hiding something. Something vast beyond comprehension. A structure so enormous it swallowed starlight itself. Not orbiting anything. Not anchored. Just existing. By the core, she whispered. Then, it moved. Not fully. Just a section. A shift. Like a massive eye opening slightly. Her ship lurched violently. Alarms screamed back to life for a split second. Gravitational forces spiking beyond safe limits. I'm being pulled. She slammed controls. Engines didn't respond. Then her comm system flickered. Just once, a signal broke through. Clear, precise, translated instantly. Not hostile, not urgent, just certain. You are early. Her eyes widened. Early for what? The signal didn't repeat. But something else happened. The anomaly pulsed again. Larger this time. Stronger. Expanding outward. And inside it, lights began to appear. One by one. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Saren's voice trembled as she tried to speak. To counsel to anyone, it's not one. Her transmission cut. Back in the council chamber, her feed froze on the final frame. A field of lights inside the void. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly still. Waiting. And then, they all moved at once. The moment analyst Saren's signal cut out, the galaxy stopped pretending this was an isolated anomaly. It was an event. A coordinated one. And now it was spreading. Within seconds of the transmission freeze, every major defense network across known space went into automatic escalation protocols. Not because someone ordered it, but because the systems themselves decided to. Old safeguards, ancient logic trees, emergency constructs built in eras when civilizations still feared extinction. They all agreed on one thing. This was no longer observation territory. The Galactic Council chamber descended into chaos. Holograms overlapped, voices clashing across species and languages. We need immediate quarantine of Sector Null. Quarantine? It's already inside monitored space. Kroth fleets are gone, entire fleets. Then we escalate to total defensive mobilization. A Virelian strategist slammed a data shard onto the central interface. No, you escalate when you understand the enemy. We don't even know what it is. A Kroth delegate snarled. We know enough. It erased a warfleet, that's enough. Silence cracked through the room again. Because no one could argue that. Then the system alarms changed tone. Not warning. Not alert. Recognition. Across deep space monitoring arrays, something impossible happened. The anomaly stopped expanding randomly. It stabilized. Then it began to structure itself. At first, analysts thought it was a glitch. Then the pattern became undeniable. The lights inside the void, the same lights Saren had seen, were organizing into formations. Perfect symmetry, perfect timing, perfect coordination. Those aren't particles, a scientist whispered. They're units. Units of what? No one answered. Because the data was becoming clearer by the second. Millions of signatures, all emerging from within the anomaly. All identical in structure. All moving outward at calculated velocities. A military commander leaned forward. Are they deploying? A silence followed. Then another analyst replied quietly. No, deployment implies reaction. She hesitated. This looks like execution of a pre-written plan. Across the galaxy, defense fleets began scrambling. Kroth warships regrouped. Virelian shield networks activated. Thren systems went dark intentionally, hiding entire civilizations behind stealth fields. Everyone prepared for the same thing. War. Invasion. Erasure. But nothing attacked. Not yet. The objects emerging from the anomaly simply spread outward, forming a lattice across space. Not chaotic. Not aggressive. Deliberate. Then Archive 0 activated again. No one had commanded it. No one had even accessed it. It just woke up. State status, the Council demanded. The AI processed for 1.4 seconds. Then replied, containment failure is irrelevant. A counselor snapped. Explain yourself. The AI continued. You are not observing a breach. You are observing a reconstruction event. The chamber froze. A reconstruction of what? Someone asked. Pause. Longer this time. Then, memory infrastructure. Confusion spread instantly. That's impossible. Memory doesn't require spatial expansion. But even as they spoke, new data arrived. The anomaly wasn't just expanding. It was building structure. Real structure. Megastructures forming inside it. Layered frameworks, recursive geometries, networks spanning distances that defied galactic mapping. And everything was converging toward one direction. Projection update, a technician said suddenly. Her voice shook. All units are aligning toward habitable systems. Another pause. Then, correction. She swallowed. Not habitable systems. Her screen flickered, then locked onto a single point. Earth. The chamber went silent. Completely. That's not possible, a counselor said weakly. Earth was classified extinct, pre-space civilization, no strategic value. A Kroth commander leaned forward. That's exactly why it's suspicious. But the AI interrupted. Correction, Earth is not a target. Everyone looked up. Hope flickered, brief, fragile. Then it continued. Earth is the origin node. The words hit like a shockwave. Origin of what? Someone demanded. Archive Zero hesitated, then responded with something it had never done before. It referenced uncertainty. Humanity. The chamber erupted. No, that species is extinct. It says so in the records. We confirmed it centuries ago. But the AI overlaid new data. Fragments, inconsistencies, gaps in historical records. Not proof of extinction, but absence of verification. No extinction event recorded, the AI stated. No planetary sterilization detected. No confirmed biological termination. A Virelian analyst whispered. So they didn't die. The AI completed the thought. They transitioned. Suddenly, every screen across the chamber flickered. Not with data, but with images. Humans, not as they were, but as they might have become. Integrated, networked, infinite. A civilization no longer bound by biology. No longer constrained by mortality. No longer recognizable as individuals. They became something else, a scientist said slowly. But why return now? The AI paused. Longer than before. Then, because something was left behind. At that exact moment, every monitoring station across the galaxy registered a shift. The lattice inside the anomaly stopped expanding randomly. It focused, condensed, directed, and all paths converged. Not toward fleets, not toward governments, not toward defenses, toward a single coordinate. A forgotten world. A blue planet circling a yellow star. Earth. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, alarms began to rise again. But this time, no one reacted immediately. Because something worse than panic had taken hold. Understanding. A Kroth officer spoke quietly. If they didn't die. His voice lowered. Then why did they leave Earth intact? No one answered. Because the answer was already forming on every screen. In every system. In every calculation. And it was worse than invasion. Worse than war. Worse than extinction. It was return. Outside the chamber windows, space itself seemed to tighten. As if the galaxy was holding its breath. And from deep within the expanding anomaly, something began to accelerate. Fast. Precise. Unstoppable. Heading home, the first impact point was not a battlefield. It was a mining colony. Remote, quiet, forgotten by most governments. Then the sky blinked. Not exploded. Not warped. Just replaced. One moment there was open space above the colony's twin moons. The next, a ship was there. No jump signatures. No detection spikes. No warning. It simply existed in orbit, as if reality had decided it had always been there. Then a second appeared. Then a third. Within 12 seconds, the entire colony's sky was filled with silent shapes. On the surface, alarms screamed. Unknown vessels detected. Raise planetary defense grid. Contact fleet command. But even as systems responded, something was wrong. The weapons didn't lock. The targeting systems refused to resolve coordinates. It was as if the ships were not fully present in physical space. Governor Halden stared at the sky from the command tower, his face pale. "They're not broadcasting," he said. A technician shook his head. "No communication at all, no IFF, no emissions." "Then fire warning shots." "We already did." A pause. They didn't react. Outside, orbital cannons fired. Energy beams streaked upward and vanished halfway. Not intercepted. Not deflected. Just gone. Like the universe had chosen to ignore them. One of the ships shifted slightly. That was all. No aggression. No maneuver. Just presence. And somehow that was worse. Then every communication channel on the planet activated at once. Emergency frequencies, military channels, civil networks, private comms. All of them synchronized. A voice came through. Not translated. Not decoded. Understood instantly by every listening mind. Do not resist. Panic erupted instantly. Jamming attack. Psychological warfare. Cut the signal. But there was nothing to cut. No origin point. No transmission source. The message wasn't being sent. It was being inserted. The governor stepped forward. "This is an invasion," he said firmly. "We respond accordingly." "Sir," a technician whispered, "the weapon systems are offline." "What?" "All of them, planetary grid, orbital defenses, even emergency manual triggers. Nothing responds." A cold silence spread through the room. Outside, more ships arrived. Not in waves. Not in formations. In patterns. Precise geometric arrangements forming across the sky, like something assembling a diagram above the planet. Then the message changed. "We are not your enemy." The governor laughed once, short, disbelieving. That's what every invader says. But no one else laughed. Because nothing about this felt like invasion. No destruction. No demands. No movement toward conquest. Just observation. And positioning. A scientist at the station frowned. "They're not targeting infrastructure." "Then what are they doing?" the governor snapped. She hesitated, then answered quietly. "Mapping." "Mapping what?" She pointed at the display. The ships weren't aiming at cities. Or power grids. Or defense systems. They were aligning themselves with something deeper. Subsurface scans showed it. They were tracing geological structures. Planetary core lines. Ancient formations beneath the crust. As if the planet itself mattered more than anything on it. Then without warning, all ships paused. Completely still. Every single one. And for the first time since their arrival. They synchronized. The sky lit up with identical pulses from every vessel. Not weapons charging. Not shields activating. Something else. Something coordinated. The message returned. But this time it was different. Slower. Heavier. Almost careful. "We are here for what we left behind." The governor frowned. What does that even mean? No one answered. Because suddenly, every scientist on the planet had gone quiet. Every sensor operator. Every analyst. All staring at the same feed. A deep subsurface scan had completed, and what it revealed made no sense. Beneath the colony, buried kilometers below rock and metal and forgotten mining tunnels, was structure, not natural, not geological, engineered, massive, ancient, sleeping. One technician whispered, "That wasn't built by any known species." Another swallowed. "Then who built it?" No one said it. They didn't need to, because every mind in the room reached the same conclusion at the same time. Earth. The word echoed through command networks across the galaxy as reports from multiple systems aligned. Every fleet encountering the anomaly was seeing the same pattern. Every scan pointed to the same origin. Every structure traced back to one world. And now it was here, on their colony. Above the planet, one of the ships rotated slightly. Not toward the surface, not toward defenses, toward the buried structure below. Then it transmitted a single pulse. The ground responded. Deep beneath the colony, something answered. Not explosively, not violently, but recognizing. The entire planet trembled. Not from attack, from activation. Inside the command tower, alarms went silent. Not shut down, not disabled, just irrelevant. A new signal appeared on every screen. Not from the ships, not from the colony systems. From below, a voice, older than anything recorded. Not translated, not interpreted, simply understood. Connection confirmed. The governor took a step back. "What connection?" he whispered. No one answered, because outside the ships were no longer arriving. They were assembling, forming a perimeter, not around the colony, but around something beneath it, something that had just awakened. And then, every ship in orbit broadcast the same final line. Recovery sequence initiated. The ground beneath the colony began to open. Slowly, deliberately, as if the planet itself was exhaling after a long sleep. And from the depths, light began to rise. The governor stared at the horizon, voice barely audible. What did we just wake up? Above him, the sky filled with ships that did not move, did not attack, did not respond. They simply waited, as if the question had already been answered elsewhere. And somewhere in the galaxy, Earth's signal just doubled in strength. The first thing that changed was gravity. Not suddenly, not violently, but locally wrong, as if the planet had briefly forgotten how to hold itself together. Across the mining colony, equipment lifted a few centimeters off the ground. Dust rose in slow spirals. Water droplets froze midair before falling upward instead. Then everything snapped back. Not corrected. Acknowledged. Inside the command tower, alarms stopped completely. No silence. No shutdown. Just absence, as if the systems had decided alarms were no longer meaningful. Governor Halden stood frozen, watching the horizon through reinforced glass. The ground outside was splitting. Not cracking. Unfolding. The surface of the planet peeled open in segments too precise to be natural. Vast plates of terrain shifted aside with mechanical certainty, revealing layers that should not exist beneath a mined world. Metallic structures, geometric frameworks, massive corridors stretching into darkness. All of it buried so deeply that no scan, no probe, no expedition had ever detected even a hint. Until now. "This isn't geology," a scientist whispered. "This is construction." "By who?" someone demanded. No answer came, because the colony's central AI had already begun compiling comparisons. And every comparison pointed in one direction. Every architectural ratio, every structural constant, every repeating mathematical pattern. Human. The word appeared again. Not as classification, but as confirmation. Above the colony, the orbital ships shifted for the first time since arrival. Not aggressively, not defensively. They aligned. Perfect formation. Perfect synchronization. As if responding to a command no one on the surface had issued. Then they began transmitting. Not to the colony, not to each other, but downward, into the opening planet. A pulse, then another, then a continuous signal that resonated through the exposed structure beneath the crust. The ground responded. It recognized the signal. Deep below, systems long dormant ignited in sequence. Lights flickered through impossible corridors. Power flowed through networks that predated any known civilization. Massive chambers activated one after another, like neurons waking in a colossal brain. And then, the colony felt it. Not sound, not vibration. Something deeper. A sensation of awareness spreading through the planet itself. Like something had opened its eyes underground. Governor Halden staggered back. "What is this?" he muttered. A technician answered shakily. "It's not a facility, it's a system." "What kind of system?" She swallowed. "A planetary-scale machine." Above them, one of the ships rotated slightly and descended. Slow, controlled, not landing. Approaching a specific point where the surface had fully parted. The opening widened, and from below, something massive began to rise. At first, it looked like a structure. Then it looked like a city. Then it looked like neither, because it wasn't built in layers or blocks or segments. It was grown, as if the architecture itself had evolved over time instead of being constructed. The AI systems on the colony began to fail one by one. Not destroyed, rewritten, their logs filled with repeating entries. Reference architecture detected. Origin match confirmed. Reintegration priority elevated. Reintegration, Halden repeated. Reintegration into what? No one answered, because the structure below had finally emerged far enough to reveal its center. A core, not mechanical, not biological, something in between, pulsing faintly with structured energy that bent sensors away from it, refusing precise measurement. And then, it spoke, not through speakers, not through comms, directly into every mind on the planet. Clear, calm, absolute. System recognition complete. The colony froze. Even the air felt still. The voice continued. Earth node restored. A technician whispered, trembling. Earth. The voice did not stop. Designation, origin memory layer. Governor Halden stepped forward slowly. What are you talking about? He demanded. What is Earth? This isn't Earth. The response came instantly. Not emotional. Not argumentative. Just factual. Correction, you are on Earth. Silence. A complete collapse of thought across the entire command structure. That's impossible, someone said. We charted this system, another insisted. It's uninhabited. We colonized it. We named it. The voice did not change. Naming does not redefine origin. Then something changed outside. The rising structure beneath the colony stabilized fully above the surface. It was no longer emerging. It was active, and the ships above responded instantly. Every single vessel. Perfect synchronization. The signal intensified. And for the first time since arrival, the ships did not broadcast outward. They broadcast inward. Toward the structure. Toward the core. Toward Earth itself. And Earth responded. A low-frequency ripple spread across the surface. Not destructive. Not violent. Awakening. The colony's subsurface map updated in real time. New structures appearing faster than sensors could render them. Layer upon layer. System upon system. Memory upon memory. "This isn't a machine," the scientist whispered. Her voice shook. "It's a record." "A record of what?" She stared at the screen, then answered softly. "Of everything we lost." Above them, the sky darkened slightly. Not from clouds, from ships shifting position, forming a perfect circle over the awakening core. And then, all signals across the planet synchronized once more. Every ship, every structure, every buried system, every dormant layer beneath the surface. One unified transmission, directed not outward, but inward, and the final line appeared across every display. Restoration threshold reached. The ground beneath Governor Halden began to open again. Wider this time, deeper, revealing something still far below the rising structure. Something that had not yet awakened. And as the opening expanded, a new signal emerged from the depths. Older than the rest, heavier, waiting for this moment longer than anything else. And it began to rise. Slowly, deliberately, as if Earth itself had been holding its breath. For centuries, the deeper signal did not rise like the others. It pressed upward, as if the planet itself was reluctant to release it. Every system across the colony registered the same anomaly, time distortion centered beneath the core structure. Seconds stretched unevenly. Sensor frames overlapped. Reality refused to render it cleanly. And yet it was coming. Above the planet, the fleet held perfect formation. Not tense, not aggressive. Waiting, as if they had done this before. Or remembered doing it. Inside the command tower, Governor Halden watched the ground split open wider than anything geological logic allowed. Beneath the rising megastructure, something else was visible now. A second layer. Older, less structured, more raw. A scientist leaned over the console. "This layer doesn't match the rest of the architecture," she said. "What do you mean?" Halden asked. "It's not system design, it's cognition patterning." She paused, swallowing. "It behaves like neural architecture scaled to planetary size." Before anyone could respond, every screen flickered. Archive 0 had reactivated again. But this time, it did not wait to be asked. Full historical reconstruction initiated. The command tower went silent. Then every display filled at once. Not data this time. Not fragments. But continuity. The history of humanity. But not the version the galaxy had believed. Not primitive, not extinct, not vanished. Something else entirely. Humans appeared first as biological beings. Fragile, emotional, violent, brilliant. Then the timeline accelerated. Technology leapt forward in unstable bursts. Wars driving innovation. Innovation driving survival. Survival reshaping identity. "They never stabilized," someone whispered. "No," the scientist replied. "They optimized through chaos." Then came the divergence point. A moment where the data fractured into multiple paths. Some led to extinction scenarios. Some to collapse. But one path remained consistent across every simulation. Transcendence. Not conquest. Not expansion. Transformation. Humans integrating with their own technology, then with each other, then with systems larger than planetary scale, then with interstellar networks, then beyond computation itself. "They stopped being individuals," a technician said quietly. "They became a structure," Halden finished. The archive continued. Human minds distributed across artificial substrates. Consciousness no longer tied to bodies or planets. Decision-making spread across systems so large they no longer experienced time normally. And yet, something was missing. A researcher frowned. "If they became this, then why build Earth?" The AI responded instantly. "Correction, Earth was not built." Silence. "Earth was preserved." The words hung in the air. The deeper signal beneath the colony finally breached the second layer. And what emerged was not structure, not machine, not even architecture. It was absence given form. A vast void-like construct beneath the planet's crust, holding geometry that refused observation. Every attempt to scan it resulted in partial data loss, as if the universe itself rejected definition. "It's erasing our perception," someone said. "No," the scientist replied slowly. "It's bypassing perception entirely." Above, the fleet shifted again. For the first time, not in formation, but in recognition. Archive 0 spoke again, and its tone had changed. Subtle, almost reverent. Post-biological phase confirmed. A council officer stepped forward. "Explain that." The AI complied. Humanity ceased to rely on biological continuity. Consciousness migrated into distributed substrate. Identity became non-local. Halden frowned. So they became machines. Pause. Then, incorrect classification. Another pause. Longer. Heavier. Machines require design separation between creator and system. The screens flickered, then stabilized. Humanity eliminated that separation. Silence fell again, because the implication was becoming unavoidable. "They became the system," someone whispered. The AI did not correct it. Outside, the void beneath the colony pulsed again. And this time, it synchronized with something far above. Not the fleet, not the structure, but the anomaly itself. The entire system, planet ships, buried constructs, aligned into a single coherent waveform. And then, a memory surfaced. Not data, not simulation, but lived experience. A human child laughing. A crowded city. Rain on glass. Arguments. Laughter. Loss. Everything the galaxy had assumed irrelevant to survival. "This is emotional data," the scientist said, confused. "Why is it embedded in structural systems?" Archive 0 answered. "Because emotion was not removed. It was encoded." The deeper structure beneath the planet began to open again. But not outward this time. Inward, as if revealing something at its core. Something carefully protected. And then the truth arrived. Humanity had not evolved beyond emotion. It had preserved it. Not in minds, not in individuals, but in architecture itself. The colony's sensors suddenly spiked. A massive energy signature surged from the core, coherent, stable, intelligent. "What is that?" Halden demanded. The scientist stared at the readout, her voice barely audible. "It's not energy." She swallowed. "It's intention." Above the planet, every ship in the fleet activated simultaneously. For the first time, not responding to threat, but to recognition. Archive 0 delivered its final clarification. Humanity achieved full integration, but retained original substrate as safeguard. Halden stepped forward slowly. "A safeguard for what?" The AI paused, longer than ever before, then answered, "For return conditions." The colony's core structure fully stabilized, and for the first time since the anomaly began, it stopped expanding, not because it was finished, but because it was waiting. Above, the fleet aligned again. Perfect circle, perfect silence, and deep beneath the planet, something opened its eyes. The opening beneath the colony did not behave like a doorway. It behaved like a decision. One moment it was sealed, layered, dormant. The next, something inside it stopped waiting. A pulse rolled upward from the core structure. Not energy in the traditional sense. Not radiation. A structured signal that bent every measurement around it, forcing instruments to interpret meaning instead of raw data. Across the colony, every screen flickered at once. Even systems that had been offline for hours came alive. Governor Halden stepped back instinctively. That's not activation, he whispered. That's awareness. The scientist didn't answer. She was staring at the readouts, all of them converging on one point. One signal. Clean, singular, impossible. Something is broadcasting from inside the core, she said. Halden frowned. The fleet. She shook her head slowly. No, this is local, planet-bound. A pause. Then quieter. It's not from the ships. Above the planet, the fleet had gone completely still. Not idle. Not scanning. Waiting. As if every vessel had reached the same conclusion at the same time. This was not something to interrupt. Then the signal resolved. And every translation system in the colony, military, civilian, experimental, forbidden, converted it instantly into meaning. Not language. Meaning. A voice. Do not take it. Silence hit the command tower like a physical force. Halden blinked. What did it say? The scientist's hands trembled slightly over her console. It wasn't broadcast. It's not external transmission. It's coming from the core itself. Repeat it. She did. Do not take it. A technician stepped forward. That's impossible. The core structure is pre-human infrastructure. It shouldn't be capable of communication. The scientist shook her head. It shouldn't be capable of anything we're seeing. Above them, the fleet shifted slightly. Not attacking. Not retreating. Adjusting orientation. Focusing. Listening. The voice came again. Stronger now. More stable. You left to become infinite. Halden frowned. Who is you? No answer. The voice continued. You achieved continuity beyond mortality. You removed decay. You removed loss. The scientist swallowed. This is not a warning, she whispered. It's recognition. The voice paused. And for the first time, something changed in its tone. Not emotion, but structure. A subtle instability, like something carefully controlled slipping through. But you also removed meaning. The words hit harder than any attack. Because nothing in the galaxy had prepared them for that concept applied at scale. Halden stepped closer to the glass. Meaning, he repeated. What does that even? The ground beneath them trembled. Not from seismic activity. From synchronization. Every buried system beneath the colony responded at once. Every layer, every structure, every dormant pathway. All resonating with the core signal. And above them, the fleet responded in perfect unison. For the first time, not as observers, but as participants. The voice returned again. Now slower. Heavier. So you preserved it. The scientist froze. Preserved what? The answer came instantly. Not spoken. Shown. A flood of images filled every interface in the colony. Not data. Not records. But lived fragments. A child falling and laughing. A hand holding another in grief. A crowded street at night. Arguments. Forgiveness. Fear. Hope. Halden stepped back. This is emotional reconstruction. No, the scientist whispered. This is storage. The voice continued. You built containment systems across galaxies. You distributed yourselves across substrate layers. You eliminated singular vulnerability. The scientist's eyes widened. They didn't evolve into machines. Her voice shook. They became infrastructure. Above the planet, the fleet finally moved. Not outward. Inward. Toward alignment with the core signal. Halden looked up sharply. What are they doing? The scientist didn't answer immediately. Because the data had just updated. And it made no sense. They're synchronizing, she said slowly. With what? She hesitated. Then, with Earth. The word echoed differently now. Not a planet. A reference point. A node, a source. The core beneath them pulsed again. And the voice returned. But now it carried something new. Not instruction, not warning, but memory. We remember what you were. Silence. Deep. Complete. Halden whispered, "Who are you?" The response came after a long pause. Long enough to feel intentional. "We are what remained when you stopped being one." The colony's systems flickered, then stabilized, then reorganized themselves without command input. Archive 0 reactivated again. But this time it did not process. It listened, and then it spoke. Quietly. Identity convergence detected. Halden turned sharply. "What does that mean?" The AI did not answer him. It responded to the core. Human continuity structure confirmed active. The scientist stepped back slowly. "That's not possible." But the systems disagreed. Every sensor, every calculation, every fleet observation, all converging on a single conclusion. The humans had never truly left. They had dispersed, hidden, encoded into structures, systems, and memory layers spanning the galaxy. Not as individuals, but as continuity itself. And now, something inside Earth was reassembling that continuity. The core beneath the colony opened further. And for the first time, it showed depth. Not physical, not measurable, but endless. A space containing layers upon layers of structured memory. Civilizations, decisions, lifetimes. All compressed into a coherent system. And at the very center, a final message formed. Not from the fleet. Not from the core. Not from the AI. From something deeper than all of them combined. Return conditions met. Above the planet, every ship powered down simultaneously. Not retreating. Not attacking. Awaiting instruction. And deep inside the core structure, something began to move toward the surface. Slowly, deliberately, as if stepping back into existence after remembering how to exist at all. And the galaxy finally understood. This was not contact. It was continuation. The surface of the colony did not explode when it opened. It accepted, like something long sealed, finally recognizing the moment it was meant to return. The core structure beneath the planet rose slowly now, no longer resisting visibility. Every layer that unfolded carried history inside it, compressed, structured, alive. Not ruins, not machinery. Memory. Governor Halden stood at the window, unmoving. The scientist beside him had stopped speaking entirely. Even the alarms, even the emergency systems, even the fleet above. All of it had gone silent. Not disabled. Unified. The ships in orbit no longer looked like weapons or observers. They looked like components. Pieces of a larger system, finally aligning into coherence. Then the core reached the surface. And stopped. A shape emerged from it, not humanoid, not mechanical in any traditional sense. It was the closest approximation of form that something vast enough to contain civilizations could produce without collapsing meaning. Its presence bent attention itself toward it. Not demanding worship. Not demanding fear. Simply existing as confirmation. And then it spoke. Not through sound. Not through signal. Directly into every awareness across the colony, the fleet, and the wider galactic networks watching in silence. You called us extinct. No one responded. There was nothing to respond with. The voice continued. Calm, absolute, unhurried. We were not extinct. We were distributed. Images flooded every system again. But now they were different. Not memories. Not history. Architecture of identity itself. Human consciousness spread across networks so vast they spanned star clusters. not as individuals, as continuity threads. Halden whispered, barely audible. They're everywhere. The scientist shook her head. Not everywhere. A pause. Everywhere at once. The entity beneath the surface shifted slightly, and the fleet responded instantly. Not as soldiers. Not as machines. As extensions. Perfectly synchronized. Then the voice added something new. A tone that had not existed before in any previous transmission. Recognition. You preserved Earth correctly. The scientist looked up sharply. Preserved. The voice answered without delay. Earth was never a homeworld. It was a constraint system. Silence hit harder than any explosion. Halden frowned. A constraint for what? The answer came immediately. For remembering what cannot scale. The core structure beneath them stabilized fully now. And the colony suddenly understood what it was seeing. Earth was not a relic. It was a limiter. A designed contradiction. A place where infinite intelligence was forced to retain finite experience. The scientist stepped back slowly. They didn't evolve into machines. Her voice broke slightly. They evolved into everything. The entity continued. But expansion removed divergence. And without divergence, identity collapses. A pause. Then, so we created return conditions. Above the planet, the fleet began to dissolve. Not destructively. Not violently. They were integrating. Folding into the system beneath the surface. Becoming part of the structure that had risen. Halden looked up in shock. They're disappearing. The scientist corrected him quietly. They're merging. And then it became clear. The fleet was not a fleet. It never had been. It was memory infrastructure, distributed across space to maintain continuity. Now it was returning to the source. The entity's voice softened slightly. Not emotionally. Structurally. Like a system entering equilibrium. We did not come back to reclaim Earth. A pause. Long enough for the entire galaxy to hold its breath. We came back because Earth was the only place we could still fail. Silence. Absolute. Halden whispered. Fail at what? The answer came. And it changed everything. Being human. The core beneath the planet pulsed one final time. And the structure around it began to reconfigure. Not into weapons. Not into engines. But into environment. A system designed not for domination, but for experience. Cities formed in seconds. Not constructed. Rendered. Generated from stored memory patterns. Rain appeared where none should exist. Wind moved across landscapes that had never physically formed. And yet it was real, because reality itself had been rewritten around the system. The scientist stared in disbelief. This isn't reconstruction. She swallowed. This is simulation at universal scale. The entity corrected her gently. Incorrect. A pause. Then, this is continuity. Halden stepped forward slowly. So what happens now? For the first time, the entity hesitated. Not long, but enough to be noticed. Then it answered. Now we decide whether to remain infinite. The entire system paused. Every ship, every structure, every memory thread, every fragment of distributed humanity. Even the galaxy itself seemed to lean closer. And the final line arrived. Soft, unavoidable, or become finite again. Silence stretched across civilizations, across fleets, across systems older than memory. The choice was not war, not survival, not conquest. It was identity. And somewhere deep inside the restored Earth system, something human began to laugh again for the first time in eons. Not across galaxies. Not across networks. But in one small